we're going to look at simple interest. So we've been given a simple interest chart, and this chart, pretty much what it's setting up is a question where we have to solve for interest earned, we have to solve for principal, we have to solve for the interest rate, and we have to solve for time. So every part of the formula, okay? Now, it's very common to be given just this formula, the interest, okay? So this is the interest earned in a simple interest is equal to the principal times the interest rate times time. So it's the same amount. Simple interest never builds. So what I mean by that is compound interest. Say you have $100, and then 1 year you earn $10. The next year you would earn money in a compound interest on $110. Simple interest doesn't work that way. It's just constantly on the original amount. It's kind of sucky in terms of interest earning, and it's very rare that you'll see any bank account that ever works this way. But it's an introduction to learning about interest. This formula is a more encompassing formula for simple interest. This A here stands for the total amount, okay, is equal to your principal, times 1, and 1 represents the idea of 100%, so your original principal, 100% of it, plus your interest rate times time, okay? So I'm going to try to use this formula a lot, and I'll kind of relate it to this as we go along. There's a lot of questions, so I'm going to try to go through it somewhat quickly. The only thing we have to make an assumption there is we've been given interest rates, but we don't know what the interest rates occur over. Is it 5% a year? Is it 5% a month, a day? All of these things. What we're going to do is we're going to constantly assume it's a year. This is because most interest rates are based off a year. Okay, so this chart didn't give it to us, we're going to say it's a year. So the very first one, I'm going to use that formula we drew out. Okay, so we had A is equal to, and maybe we'll call principal, we'll do it in blue, so P times 1 plus R can be in green here, times time can be in red, okay, times time. Okay, so the very first one, actually, of the two formulas we've been given, to find interest earned, technically this is the easiest one to do it in. But I want to do it in this one just so you get used to using this formula. Okay, what this formula is, again, is we're putting in an original amount and how much will be in the bank account after. So we plug in our values. We have a principal of 750, okay, so our amount is going to be equal to the 735 times 1 plus the interest rate. Okay, so the interest rate is 5.5. I'm going to change it to a decimal, and to change it to a decimal, you have to divide it by 100. So it would really be 0.055. So if you're unsure how to do that, you would just take 5.5 divided by 100, and you get your 0.055. So anytime you have a percentage, that's how you change it into a decimal. So that's what we're going to do for all of these. Now, time is tricky in this question because it's per year. Okay, this is 27 days. That's not a year, right? That's not even close to a year. It's not even a month. So what we're going to do, how many days are in a year?
365.
So what we're going to say is time is 27 over 365, okay? And the reason being is because this account only earns this amount of interest in 1 year. So this is not a year, okay? So it's really important for us. So this is a kind of a tough one to start off with. Okay, so A is equal to, we'll figure out these two. Luckily, I think my calculator can do this most of this in one step. We'll do 27 divide 365 is equal to, okay, there's that decimal. And I'm going to multiply that by 0.055, really small number. And then I can add that to 1. So I'm going to do this all in one step. So I'm kind of working from right to left here. Plus 1, so it constantly takes the answer from before. Okay. So this would be the number in the bracket, and then I'm going to multiply that by 735. So look at that. I really didn't have to write anything else. I was able to do it all on my calculator, and there we go. 737.99. So 737.99. Now, this actually didn't tell us the interest earned. It told us how much is in the bank account. How can we figure out how much interest they earned? If this is how much we have now, how much did we start with?
735.
Yeah. So how do we find the difference between those two?
Subtracting them?
That's exactly right. So this is one of the few cases where I would say the formula we used is actually the less efficient formula. It'd probably have been better if we had used, and it's $2.99, okay? So the interest earned is $2, we'll write in, I guess we're right in here, $2.99. This would have been much faster. Plug 3 numbers in, principal times rate times time. So that would have been this number times this number times this number, and we would have found our interest. And I'll quickly show you how that would have been faster. It would have been 27 divided 365, so we get that decimal, times 0.055 equals times 735, and your interest earned is $2.99. So that's where that would be better, but I want to get used to this, okay? Now, second one, finding the original principal. That's where this formula kind of helps, okay? Actually, again, this is already set up, so it's interest earned. This formula, the way this chart is set up, seems to always be the best formula to use because, and this is uncommon, they've already told you how much interest is earned. Normally what they'll say in this case is they'll actually say that your bank account has, I don't know, $7,000, okay? How do I figure out what the original principal was? And in that case, we'd have an A amount. So I should have looked through this, but in this one, I guess we'll use the I one just so you can see the two different ways of doing it, okay? So the I formula is equal to PRT. Well, P is unknown, okay? So we have P we don't know. R in this case is 8.25 divided by 100. So R is 0.0825. Time again is funny, 240 days, and we're going to assume it's per year, so 240 over 365. Okay. The P is still unknown, and the interest earned, so they told us is 138.25. So to isolate for P, we're going to turn this into a decimal, and then we're going to divide by it. So we'll get 138.25 is equal to P, okay, and what will this value be? We'll find out. 240 divide 365. That's the first value. Then we multiply by our decimal, 0.0825. Okay, so we have that number. Now, I know what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be taking 138.25 and dividing by this. So instead of writing it out, I'm going to write 138.25. So my calculator works good for this, divided by, and I can hit that number. Okay, so I've just taken it and divided by that. So our P is going to be 2548. 5.5. I don't know why it took me so long to say. P 2548. Did I say 5.5? Something like that. 5, yeah, round it to 5. So that's what they originally started with. And what that, that's the principal. So 2545. Am I making things up? No, 48. There you go. 5. Okay, and that's essentially it. You would do the same thing to calculate time. Filled in all the slots. Our A value is our original principal plus our interest earned. So we took this principal, added the interest earned, and that's how much is in the bank account now. We've got to isolate for T. Okay, so because this is like distributed here on the outside, we need to actually bring this over first and divide by it. So we need to get 205.93 divided by 182.65, okay, and that's going to give us a value. And we're going to round it to 1.127, we'll say. Okay, 1.127, okay, so we brought that over, is equal to, and now we're left with 1 plus, and I'm going to write this kind of like a coefficient, 0.0675 t, right? You know how we'd write it with like an x. We got to bring the 1 over and subtract by 1, so that's going to leave us with 0.127. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Okay. Is equal to 0.0675. Okay. Times time, and then we're going to have to bring over, because this is multiplied, the 0.0675 as a division question. So time will be equal to that divided by that. So let's bring it out in our calculator here. 0.127 divided by 0.0675, and we get 1.881. Round it to that. 1.881. Now that is a very interesting amount. What does that mean for time? Okay, and this is where time becomes difficult. And this decimal of time, we need to convert it kind of to days. We know that 1 is 365. So what we can do is we can multiply this by 365. So if we take 1.881 and times it by the 365 days, it'll give us days and a decimal. So we'll just round it to the nearest day. So we'll take this amount and multiply by, so take that amount, so it's very, very exact right now, and multiply by 365, and this is how many days it'll be. 668, we'll say 687 days, roughly. So in time, that's approximately 687 days. Okay, does that make sense how to convert time? Okay, so 387. And then the last thing for interest rate would be the same thing. You would just isolate for your R. And I guess last one. Looking for interest rate. Interest earned was 16.5, so we're using the other formula. We went back and forth. Principal was 260. Time was in months, so instead of being over 360, it's over 12 in this case. Okay. Same idea. Associative property says we can multiply any numbers in any order, so we're going to do that. We're going to multiply the 260 by 2 over 12. So 16, oh, it chose a different color, I guess, is equal to 260 times 2 over 12, so it's the same as 1 over 6 times R. So I'm going to try to do this again all kind of in one step. 1 over 6, so 1 divided by 6 equals, not that small, times 260. Okay, so that's what this would be, 43.33. And I need to bring it to the other side, so I got to do 1650 divided by that, because this is multiplication, so we divide. 1650 divide our value there, and our interest rate is 0.38. Yeah, we round it right to 0.38. So R equals 0.38. What is that as a percentage? How do I turn that into a percentage? 0.38. You know what we'd multiply by?
100.
That's right. And that becomes 38%. That is a huge interest rate. Yeah, I guess that makes sense. Yeah. We got an interest rate of 38%. Amazing. There we go.